Welcome back to the channel, you guys. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe, the notification bell, all that good stuff so you don't miss any of the content that we're dropping daily, weekly, whatever the case may be. But today, we're going to talk about handguns. Specifically, this is my Glock 45. We're going to talk about how I am making a choice, potentially a rather bad one, to improve my shooting ability and potentially increase speed. So let's talk about what I'm going to do next. Okay, so we're talking about improving speed, improving ability with shooting. Yes, I know, and I understand that the software is always going to beat the hardware. Training is always going to be the best thing you can do to improve your overall performance and capability. Now, years ago, there was something called the Roland Special. We've talked about this a little bit before on the channel, and I know I just did a podcast episode talking about, the difference between gear and skill and balancing the two things, and how your training can be a force multiplier to all of the gear that you have, and that certainly is still true. However, going back in time, maybe about 10 years or so, the Roland Special was what everybody had deemed to be the most necessary way to run a handgun in order to be effective and capable. If you guys know what a Roland Special was, I'll throw an image up on the screen. It was essentially a compensated Glock 19, potentially with a better trigger, or at least an aftermarket one. Aftermarket, obviously not always being truly better, but lighter, certainly. And then an X300 and an RMR being milled into the slide. And that was the hotness, right? Because that way you could shoot flatter with the Compensator. You had the light on there. You had the RMR, because at that time, right, the MOS platform or at least for Glocks and most other handguns, honestly, really wasn't widely circulated, or actually 10 years ago, it may not even have been in existence yet. And people were looking for ways to run their handguns better, faster, I would say more consistently, but that really wasn't the way that it always worked out. But people wanted to go faster, they wanted to shoot flatter, and as always, people are looking for a way to cut those corners, add a piece of gear here, tune something there, and go ahead and, get faster without having to put a lot of time into it, right? And that's where compensators come into the discussion.
Maybe he's compensating for something.
So this compensator is the HC95 sent over to me by my friend Jake at Herrington Arms. And this is going to go on my Glock 45. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with compensators and what they do, you see a lot of performance handguns like staccatos and things like that now, where they actually have the porting and the venting and the compensator built into the end of the slide or on the end of the gun itself, right, where it's an integrated part of the handgun. You also see it, or you used to before the SIG P320 became persona non grata in the community, where people would run a short slide with a longer frame, and then they were integrating their compensator onto the end of the barrel. Now, that certainly works. Glock, at least I'm aware of with Glocks, you can't do that, but you can take this compensator, like many others from other companies, and go ahead and thread that onto the end of the barrel, and what it's going to do is the porting that's on the top and the sides of this are going to help vent those gases to the top and the sides. And what that's going to do is help stabilize the handgun side to side, as well as that vent pushing that gas upward is going to help keep your muzzle down. It's going to help your gun shoot flatter, ideally. Again, ideally. The problem we get into with any time that we talk about messing with how the gun runs, right? So you're talking about cycling with a rifle, how the gun cycles with a handgun. Anytime you introduce something like a compensator, a suppressor, anything, right? You're going to introduce some variables. Now, certainly, there's a lot to be said for the benefits that you can get from a compensator, but there's also a lot of detractors. And for a while there, people saw the detractors with things like the Roland Special. As a concept, it works great, but what we were seeing is a lot of people with more dollars than cents, right, that were pouring money into these factory Glocks, and then they weren't able to make them run either because of poor technique or cheap ammo or whatever the case may be. All parts and components are not created equal, and as long as we've had good ideas in this community, we've had the stupid idea to try and do it cheaper, lower quality, and have it work way worse. And I think that's how we got to the point we are today, where many people would tell you that you should take a factory Glock like this, run it with the factory trigger like this, with a factory barrel, and learn how to shoot this really, really fast and really, really well. And certainly there is a lot to be said for being able to pick up any kind of factory firearm, whether it's the Glock 45, the M&P here, the good old Gen 1, or even, yes, the 1911. Oops. Being able to pick up any one of these platforms and be able to run it and shoot it capably, reliably, and most importantly, accurately is very, very important. And good fundamentals are what are going to get you there. But does that mean that we should settle for an inherently worse firearm for the sake of being able to say that we manage recoil really well and we run a stock Glock? Is it really the brag that a lot of us think it is? Well, for the last several years here, I've been of that mindset that, hey, I'm going to learn how to run a stock Glock really well. I'm going to make sure that I can do everything I can to be the best shooter I can, which maybe not true in this case, but I'm going to do all of my work on stock hardware because I don't need any of those tools, any of those enhancements to make me better. And as I sat down and thought about it, I don't approach anything else that I do that way. Not in my personal life, certainly with technology, cell phones, computers, right? I don't do that with my carbine setups, with an adjustable bolt carrier group for gassing, with risers for optics, with optics that can run with night vision, lasers to aid with night vision, heck, having dual tube night vision or just night vision at all, so I'm not running around with only a white light. And a lot of guys don't do that. But we still come back to this idea that we have to run our handguns completely stock. And I think it's a good idea to start, but we're selling ourselves short by not embracing some of the advancements that we've had in the last 10 years on how to shoot better. Now, again, to reiterate here, you don't have to do this, and there can be some real problems. I did go out to the range about a month ago, actually, on my birthday with my brother, running a Radian Ramjet and Afterburner, very first time, which I really enjoyed. It's actually what spurred and inspired me to pursue this, but we did find there were issues. Now, they were related to his firing grip specifically, and once we were able to get him to kind of lock those hands together and firm up that grip a little bit more and squeeze more with the support hand, maybe a little bit less with the primary hand, no problems. But for the first half of that day, every 2 to 3 rounds, there was a malfunction being induced. Because again, anytime you mess with the way that that gun is going to cycle, right, you're going to be inviting gremlins into the party. And he certainly had his fair share of stovepipes, failure to ejects, failure to feed, double feed. Basically any kind of malfunction that you could have with a Glock handgun, he did have until we were able to help him fix his grip. And that's not a dig. A lot of people just don't realize the sensitivity that you're inviting in when you add a compensator. Now, let's talk about how we're going to do this. So the two primary components we're going to use to make this enhancement are the compensator itself. Again, this is the HC95 from the folks over at Herrington Arms, based just south of me in, Salem, Ohio. There we go. You guys know that I really don't like Ohio, but I partner with a lot of great companies from Ohio, like Lead and Steel and like Herrington Arms. So you guys can head over to their website. It's harringtonarms.com, I believe, and you can check these out. They're actually really, really affordable, sub $100, I think, for well-made compensators. Now, additionally, most Glocks do not come from the factory with a threaded barrel, so you obviously need to get a threaded barrel. And in this instance, I went with an OEM Glock barrel with the threads. This is for the Gen 5 Glock 19, same barrel length as the 45. So same, but different.
Same, but different.
Now, this was not my original plan. To be completely honest with you guys, I got the compensator a couple days early in the mail. It had said, I think, Monday, and it came today's Saturday. I go, man, now I'm really chomping at the bit to get this taken care of. So I looked up the local Cabela's and they have threaded barrels. Oh, okay, great. It's Zafiri or Safari Precision. I don't really know the the pronunciation there. And I go, okay, it's about 180 bucks, whatever. Hurry up and ran to Cabela's, and then, you know, got my wife, she's on the Reddits looking up the reviews and everything. And the more we look into it, the reviews are not so great on that particular brand. Now, I've never used it. I'm not trying to speak ill of the company, but I want something reliable. And certainly Glock reliability is a household name and a very well-known concept. So called another local gun shop, albeit on the other side of town. It's about a 25-minute drive from the Cabela's we were at to a shop called IFA Tactical in Sterling Heights here in Michigan. If you guys are local to Michigan, and I know a lot of you guys are, go check them out. Called them. Yep, we got one in stock here. It's OEM. For about 20 bucks more, I was able to get an OEM threaded barrel. Now, the stinky part about this is, for whatever reason, Glock does not include a thread protector with the barrel. But since I'm running a compensator on it, I'm actually not that concerned. So, went ahead, picked this up, and I trust the Glock brand. I trust the Glock name. I trust them and how they stand behind their product. Guys, if it seems too good to be true, it is, especially with components, essential components at that, with your firearms. So do not skimp out and try and save your nickels when it comes to things like your barrel, okay? Some of these brands that are out there selling barrels for sub $100, sub $200 even, and they really, really aren't as reliable, and the QC really isn't as great as it probably should be for something like a barrel. You don't want to blow up your gun because you didn't want to spend an extra $20 between that other brand and OEM Glock barrel. Now, yeah, the other one came with a thread protector, but you know what? I could get a thread protector for this if I really needed, really wanted. And you know what? It's probably not gonna be that big of a deal. So made the drive, spent a little bit extra money in gas, happy to put the money into the pockets of a local gun shop at a very reasonable price, is about 200 bucks. Also picked up Magpul stock while I was there, just for funsies. Want to throw some money at those guys. Great company. They've always been my go-to. Anytime I really need something, they happen to have it in stock. It's fantastic. So support your local gun shops. But again, I went with the Glock OEM barrel. This is what we're gonna be putting into the Glock 45. So when we talk about the installation, there's a great video on the Herrington website. I'm not really gonna try and recreate that for you guys. I will say you guys should go check that out. If you have questions, the team's very responsive. I know Jake is a great dude. And here's the things you're gonna need. If you're doing it the way I am, where you're swapping in a completely new barrel, you're probably gonna want to clean that barrel and then obviously lube that barrel before you put it in. And then make sure you have some blue, I'll say it again, blue Loctite, so that you can apply it to the threads, because you're not gonna want this compensator to back itself off and then come off while you're firing, because that would be very bad. You would have a very bad time. So other than that, that's really all you need, because they're a great company. Herrington actually includes the Allen wrench that you're gonna need, or hex key, whatever you wanna call that thing, the tool you need to tighten on the set screws, and then you're pretty much good to go. It's really, really not that bad. Their video is fantastic. So we're gonna actually cut over to me installing mine. I'll talk us through that as I'm doing it. So we've got everything we need here. You'll notice that I've already disassembled the slide off of the lower receiver here. So we can go ahead and we can get this out of the way. And of course, we're gonna break this down. I am gonna be running the factory recoil spring here. So I'll take that out. I will set that to the side. And now we can pop out our factory barrel here and we can throw this away. No, I'm kidding. Do not, listen, I know people that when they go ahead and they upgrade parts, they will take something like this barrel and they will chuck it because they only have one gun, so therefore they don't need this. And that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So go ahead, and honestly, what I'm gonna try and do is take this OEM packaging here, stick it back in here with a label on it or something, just so I don't forget what size it is exactly, and then hold on to it, because in the event that I absolutely hate shooting a compensator and wanna, you know, not have to worry about a threaded barrel or something like that, then I can go ahead and just swap back to this. Alternatively, this barrel only has, you know, not even 1,000 rounds on it. I've only had the gun for a little over a year, so I don't shoot that much, and I'm gonna hold on to this guy for a while. Okay, so now we have this completely disassembled. We can set this aside for a moment, and now we're gonna go ahead and we got to open this up. Okay, so yeah, don't need that user's manual. I'll save it, I'll set it aside. All right, upon further consideration, I will not be reusing this packaging because I completely destroyed it opening this up. So I'm just gonna throw that away. But this is here now. So what I'll do just to get started is take some some lube here, and this is just Hops 9. This is nothing fantastic. And actually, before I do that, let's go ahead and take a little bit of this Hops 9 here. This is just bore cleaner, just a little bit. We don't need a ton because this is a brand new barrel, but they do make a very specific call out on the website to go ahead and use some kind of cleaner. Got more than I wanted, but that's okay. Use some kind of cleaner on the threads here just to make sure that there's no leftover grease or oil or anything like that. And that way you're going to be able to mount your compensator, and that Loctite is going to be able to basically dry and do the things that you want it to do without any kind of issue, which is a really, really good thought and something that's probably very overlooked by most people. So just a quick wipe down here, nothing special, already done. And then we'll take an extra little swatch here, wipe this down. Some of you guys get very excited by this. It's okay, I don't judge much. And there we go. And there we go. Set this aside for a second. And some of you guys really love the smell of this stuff and would love it as a cologne. I think that's weird. It also gives me a really decent buzz and headache, which I don't love. So while we're waiting for the barrel to kind of dry out, we can go ahead and we can take our compensator. And the thing I like about the packaging here, I've already had it open once, but I resealed it for, you know, funsies, is that it's not like one of those like sealed shut containers. It just pops closed. So here, there we go. There's the tool we need for this. Set that down and then pop off this little backer here. And we have our compensator. Now, there are two screws here. You guys can see one there and one there. Those are our set screws. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Oh, we can go ahead and just tighten those down. Wrong. They have those in there so they don't get lost when you open the packaging and everything flies all over your basement or living room or bathtub or whatever the heck it is that you're doing this. So we're going to pop these out. And we're going to drop those down on there to make sure they don't get lost. Additionally, when we go ahead and install those, we do need to add some Loctite. So set those down, got our compensator here. And here is some Loctite 242 blue. Now, they do recommend the 243 in their video. 242 is not that far behind, but I think it's all I had. So that's what I'm going to go with. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead because we're putting the barrel back into the slide. So we're going to take our Hops 9, and I like to just put a little snail trail here, if you will, down the barrel, and then take our swatch, and we're just going to spread this around here. Try not to get it on the threads. Let's try and keep it in frame for the camera for you guys, like you haven't done this before a million times for your own guns. So probably not the biggest deal in the world. So spread that around, all good. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and seat this into the gun. Okay, so that's what that should end up looking like. Make sure you have the right size barrel. It should lock in here, and then you should just have a bit of a shoulder there with the threads, and you would be in really, really good shape. Now, because of this particular compensator, and again, they do a great job on their website with the video talking about this, because of the pig nose on the Gen 5 and these fins here, they create a really nice aesthetic. It does create some challenges when we're going ahead to install the comp itself. So we're just going to have to push the barrel forward a little bit out of battery essentially so that we can screw this down. Now, before we put this on though, we're going to go ahead and we are going to apply our Loctite around the threads of the barrel. And we can be pretty liberal with this because we want, unlike most of the time when we're just using it for set screws and things like that, we want to get a pretty good coating of this. So I'm going to do my best here to get that on, and then you just use the tip of it, just the tip, get it, to go ahead and spread that around and make sure you Get it all the way around here. This might be a little bit much, so I might just dab up the edge here, just to, you know, make sure it's not completely egregious. But you do want the Loctite to be all the way around and all the way, you know, on those threads. So I have an extra swatch here, and I will just walk this around a little bit, picking up some of that excess. We still got plenty on here, so I'm not too worried about it. All right, set that aside. Now, you see what I'm saying? We put the barrel out of battery, push it forward, and now we're going to, if I can find the hole, that's what she said. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start screwing this thing down. And I've been reassured on their website, you know, it says, hey, you're gonna be able to get this thing off, so don't worry about it. As long as you're using blue Loctite, don't use red. Red is a lot. So now this is as far as it goes, right? And obviously we can't go into battery, so we're gonna loosen it. And we still here can't go into battery, so we go back a turn, check it again. Nope, another turn. Closer, but not quite. Another turn, and there we go. So now it locks up, and you should still have some wiggle room here. And now what we're gonna end up doing, actually, let's see here. Yep, so that's not enough. Yep, there we go. So there's going to be there's going to be a little bit of wiggle room there for sure. Apologize on the autofocus, you guys, doing the best I can. So there is going to be a little wiggle room here, but that's okay. That's what our set screws are for. So we'll go ahead. We will set this down so the phone stops getting really, really mad at me. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to apply some Loctite to the screw here. And actually, rather than do that, I'm going to use my glue stick. Well, you know what? Here, we'll stick to what they recommend on this one, folks. This is my first compensator. It's my first time. Everybody calm down. I will do as they say and use some liquid Loctite on this. There we go. Again, way too much. Always too much, Austin. Just dab that up a little bit. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to get this set screw started. But we don't want to put it all the way in. That's what she said. And then clean up the residual here, so we don't have Loctite everywhere. So basically we're going to get these two started, and then we won't tighten them down all the way or anything, because we want to make sure that this gets seated correctly. Same thing here. Go ahead and apply our Loctite. Much better that time. And get it started. And one more time here, we're going to take our little swatch. We're going to clean this up. And you guys will have to reference their video. They do a really good job. But when you look at the slide here, we just want to make sure that we don't have it off kilter or off axis. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to tighten down these set screws. There is no torque setting for this. We do not need that much torque to hold these on. This also isn't going to ruin the threads. They do point out in the video that it doesn't bite into the threads, it bites into the shoulder of the barrel. Whoops. So no need to fear with how this is working. These set screws tighten down onto the shoulder of the barrel, and we want to make sure that this is nice and flat across the top. And there we go. I will double check this in a moment. We're going to go ahead and take our recoil spring here, pop this back in. We are good to go. That is our new complete slide. And the nice part is, because this is independently attached to the barrel, we can go ahead and adjust this. If we find that it's tilted or something, we can adjust this later on, and it's not going to be a problem for us at all. So there we go. That is our That is our HC95 compensator installed on the Glock 45. Okay, so we have the compensator installed and we should be ready to go, right? Wrong. There is another consideration, another thought point here that I want to put out and I want to talk about before we get to the whole idea, and that is your holster fitment. Now, this is a 6354 RDS. I got this one from TRX Arms, and they sell them on their site for either the Glock 17 length or the Glock 34 length. So why I mention holsters is because as you're adding this compensator to the end of your gun, you are extending the length of the barrel. And it's like, duh, Austin. But people don't think about that. And the plugs in here are different sizes for different firearms to provide a minimal amount of movement, amount of wiggle, if you will. Currently, I actually put the OT Defense plug kit in here for a Glock 19 or a Glock 45. So having, added this compensator to the end of the barrel now, it's definitely not going to fit in here. So I had to have the foresight to go pick up a different size plug for this, which was all of about $7, I think, on OT's website, and showed up in about 3 days. Really, really fast shipping, and some fantastic people at OT Defense. I'm a big fan of the nub mod. I run it on all of my holsters. But specifically on this, we need to change out the plug in here. And I got the Glock 34 length one, which is like minuscule. It's like a little sliver of plastic. May not even have had to do it, but I did it because I wanted to include it here and talk through that process. We do have a video out of me modifying this holster. You guys can look that up, and it talks about how I installed all this stuff, how I opened up the top of the holster to fit the PB3 Pandora from Lead and Steel. But holster fitment is a huge issue and a huge consideration. Yes, you can just pull some of this stuff out the bottom. You can just pop these things out, but then you start losing some structural rigidity at the bottom here. So you will want to be careful with that. I'm not saying you have to get the Portal from Ghostman Designs. You should. Again, another really, really cool company. They do sell this at T-Rex. That's where I got mine. Or go straight to their website if you don't want to give those filthy company stealing dudes your money. I get that as well, folks. But I'm going to swap out the plug on the bottom of this. Now, that is a little bit more room than I need, because the Glock 45 with the HC95 on the end is not quite as long as the Glock 34, but I'd rather have a little too much room than not quite enough room to make sure that I still get a good lockup here in the holster. So something to think about when you're making the switch from a factory gun to a compensated gun is that does extend the length of the barrel. Now, if you're running one of those awesome Kydex holsters with no secondary retention system and an open bottom, it really doesn't matter. You can do whatever the heck you want, and your holster is going to work for you just fine. But for most of us who are running Safariland or US duty gear or even alien gear, their holsters, right? I forget the name of that one. But the duty brands here with the lockups and the hoods and all the other, gee whiz fancy stuff, you do need to make a consideration for the plug in the bottom of your holster. So now let's walk through how we go ahead, take this out and swap out that plug. Okay, so now let's talk about how we're going to take out this plug. There is one screw here from Safariland that we need to take out, and there's one here on the back side too. Now, the nifty coincidence here is that this hex wrench, which was included with the HC95 from our friends over at Herrington, actually does fit this little screw. It's crazy, almost like it was maybe designed that way. It probably wasn't, but it's really cool that it was. So if you guys are running the same setup, you don't need to worry about it. So go ahead, we'll take this screw out here, make sure we set that aside so we don't lose it. Now, this is the time when we can go ahead and use our blue Loctite glue stick if we feel like we need to apply more thread locker. So I'll keep that there. Now we'll go ahead and flip this bad boy over, and I already picked this out ahead of time, so you guys didn't need to watch me suffer on the video as I go through the mountain of these that I have. And this is standard Safariland hardware, so this the plug is aftermarket, but the screw here is standard OEM Safariland. So we put the screw back in, push, we can actually get a hold of both sides, pull both of them out. There we go. Now, it just falls right out. God, I'm so smart. Okay, so this just comes apart here. Gotta wiggle it a little bit, but this is our plug for a 19 or 45. Okay, it's like a 3D printed hard plastic from OT Defense. Now, this is the replacement plug for the Glock 34 barrel length. You can see here it's the 0.05 plug. Basically, it's just to make sure we don't have this hole sitting there at the bottom. That's basically it. You could probably do without this, but I didn't because, well, Mom says I'm special. I don't know. So we go ahead and pop this back in. Cool, look at that. Now it's a little plug. And this will fit directly back here into the bottom. So we can go ahead, and what I'll do is I'll end up relabeling this. But I like to reuse these bags so I remember what these little odds and ends are when I find them later. We'll drop this in here. Good to go. Then making sure that we have the actual plug side on the inside of the holster here, and making sure that we consider this little guy when we come back here, flip it over, there we go. So now we can go ahead and we can put this back together if I can figure it out. Okay, so easiest way to do this is get it started and drop this in. Get your plug on the back side to capture this so it can't go anywhere. Okay, and then take this screw from Safariland and put this on the front side and tighten it down. As long as you get that started with your finger, you should be in good shape. We can always go back and retighten this, and we will if we need to with this wrench. Okay, now make sure there's no problems with this. We just roll this forward until we can see the little holes line up. And once you can see that hole there, we can take our other screw here, and what we're gonna do is, because this one's way harder to get out, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get just a little bit of blue Loctite on there, just so we don't have to worry about it. And then we're gonna go ahead and get this started. Get our Herrington Arms provided hex wrench here and tighten this down. And again, this isn't really like a torque specific type thing, but having it in there, feel better about it. One thing to keep in mind is not to apply pressure directly to the bottom of this plug until you have your screw most of the way in, because it will actually push that plug out, and then you'll have to remove this set screw and tighten it once it's more aligned or realigned, tighten it back down. So what I'm talking about here is when you're pushing from, don't push from the bottom on that little piece, because it will shove it back out of the hole, and then you can see your set screw there, and then you'll have to push it back down. So now we are good to go with our holster, and we shouldn't have any problem taking our gat here. There we go, minimal wobble, very serviceable, very, very exciting. Good to go. So there we are. Really not that altogether too painful of a process. I will say that even after I did the recording and everything, I went back and like redid the alignment and the leveling with these fins on the compensator here, probably like 5 to 7 more times just to make sure I got it like right, because I obsess over little things like that. And I will probably end up witness marking these just because I don't want them to come loose. I don't want to have to worry about that. But overall, the installation process, really not that bad. And the only tool that you really need is, I mean, your noggin, obviously, but a knowledge of how to disassemble and reassemble your Glock pistol. And then they provide the one hex key or hex wrench or Allen wrench, or whatever the heck you want to call it, to go ahead and tighten down those set screws, which actually happens to also coincidentally fit with your Safariland holster if you're using the OT Defense plug like I am. Speaking of the holster, here we go. There we go. So minimal wiggle there, no issues. That's, I mean, honestly, that right there, folks, you can't really ask for a whole lot more. Now, I will say alternatively, if you didn't want to spend the money on the little plug kit down here like I did, not to fret, honestly. As long as you keep the spacer and the screw in there and don't, you know, over tighten the ever loving heck out of it, you can run an open bottom on this and be just completely fine. I don't think that that's really anything you have to worry about. Additionally, if you are running the US Duty Gear holster, I did talk to Angel over at US Duty Gear and said, hey, you can go ahead and just pull that plug out the bottom, just put the screw back in. Very similar to what I just said here on this Safariland. and it should work as well. So you're pretty much good with whatever you're running, unless you're running an alien gear, in which case unfortunately I just don't have anything to add for you. But I'm sure if you reach out to those folks, they're probably familiar with people modifying firearms and needing a longer, space for something like a compensator. So should be okay. But this will take a little bit of getting used to just because it's a longer barrel and whatnot, but very excited to get some first rounds in with this. Altogether, like I said, not a bad experience. I think that there's probably a little bit of break-in that has to happen, just the longer gun in a holster that's never had a full 17 length in there, or 34 length rather. Still not as long as the X300 here. It will look a little bit, maybe, I don't know, more even if you have the TLR1 on there. I'm not going to pop that off to go experiment with it. I did keep the rest of the internals the same. I may upgrade the trigger in the future. I don't know. We'll see how I do with the Compensator here. Altogether, still not a very long firearm. I think it's, around the Glock 34 length. Should, from all indications, be a smoother shooter here. I did not change out the recoil spring either. This is the factory recoil spring. And that's one of those, unfortunately, those very touchy subjects with folks where a lot of people swear, hey, don't mess with the factory recoil spring. In this case, I listened to them. I left it factory, and I'm going to run it and see how I do. If I do need to go with a slightly lighter recoil spring, then I will maybe dive into that kiddie pool and see how deep that goes. But from what I was told, I shouldn't have to. And I was told these are very reliable in that regard. Compensator technology and testing has come a very long way since the days of the original Roland Special. So, I mean, imagine if this was a smaller Compensator and a RMR, it's sort of like the same thing, but not at all. But yeah, very excited to get rounds through this, you guys. If you're familiar with this setup or looking into a setup like this, I think altogether the blemished Compensator is somewhere around, I want to say like $80. The barrel was like $200 from the local gun shop. Might be able to find one a little bit cheaper, but it's not a huge jump. It's not a huge enhancement. You're not buying a whole new slide. And if you do have good fundamentals, if you do understand firing grip and all those things, and you're not going to have the problem where you're inducing malfunctions to the system every second or third round, like I explained earlier, this could be a game changer for you and something that I would, maybe recommend that you check out if you're looking to perhaps have a more enjoyable shooting experience, maybe just try something new in general. I think a lot of people, because of what the talking heads on YouTube and Instagram told us for years and years and years, we just stayed away from compensators. Oh, your gun's gonna be less reliable. You're gonna have to play with your recoil spring and tune everything. Oh, you can't run your 115 grain ammo anymore because you have a compensator. And it's just not the case, you guys. Again, I ran a Radian Ramjet about a month ago. It wasn't mine, it was my brother's. We have a video on that, setting it up. But I ran the heck out of that thing with 115 grain Winchester white box and had absolutely no problems with it. The only issue we had that day was, induced by grip, which we were able to resolve through, hey man, do this, change it up, whatever, and it's been fine. So very, very excited for that. And, a lot of those people that were very poo-pooing on the compensators are guys that run comped guns now. If you see guys out there running staccatos, if you see them out there running Vantas or Infinities and things like that, a lot of those 2011 platforms, a lot of those have the compensator or the porting built into the slide, built into the end of the gun. So we've just evolved past it. It's fine. We also didn't used to recommend, a lot of different stuff out there, foreign made optics and whatnot. Now they kind of lead the market in a lot of ways. So not to get into all of that, but more to come on this, and hopefully this is helpful for you guys if you're looking for some insight on the subject, looking for, I don't know, maybe just some guidance. We talked about the holster fitment, which is a big deal. That's, it's not going to fit in just any holster. You are going to have to make some changes, potentially maybe just pull the plug out of the bottom of your holster, or buy a separate aftermarket plug to make it fit. And then additionally, I think that's it, honestly, no additionally. So thank you guys so much for checking this video out. Like I said, hopefully it was helpful. If you have questions, if you have comments, leave them in the comment section. Maybe you guys really liked it and you want to brighten my day and say so. Maybe you guys think I need to stop eating carbs, and you can drop that in the comment section as well. That seems to be a real big hit too these days. But either way, thank you guys so much for engaging my algorithm and sticking around to the end of the video here. Really appreciate it. Until next time, that's all I got. So we'll catch you on the next one.